Welcome to day one of the Dreamforce 21 sessions, which is all about design. I was told that the only place build comes before design is in the dictionary. So today is all about getting the foundations right before we start to build. But before all of that, let's hear our house band, Jane Blonde and the Goldfingers, perform the Prince classic Kiss from Kirby Cove under the Golden Gate Bridge.
You don't have to be beautiful to turn me on. I just need your body, baby, from dusk till dawn. You don't need experience to tire me out. You just leave it all up to me. I'm gonna show you what it's all about. You don't have to be rich to be my girl. You don't have to be cool to rule my world. Ain't no particular sign I'm more compatible with. I just want your extra time and your kiss. Oh. You gotta not talk dirty, baby, if you wanna impress me. You can't be too flirty, mama. I know how to undress me. Yeah, I wanna be your fantasy. Maybe you could be mine. You just leave it all up to me. We could have a good time. You don't have to be rich to be my girl. You don't have to be cool to rule my world. Ain't no particular sign I'm more compatible with. I just want your extra time and your kiss. Yes. I think I wanna dance. I got to get to little soft Wendy's parade. Got to. Women are girls, they rule my world. That's it, they rule my world. Act your age, not your shoe size. Maybe we could do the 12. You don't have to watch Dynasty to have an attitude. You just leave it all up to me. My love will be your food. Yeah. You don't have to be rich to be my girl. You don't have to be cool to rule my world. Ain't no particular sign I'm more compatible with. I just want your extra time and your kiss.
Salesforce is investing in business analysis training for architects in Trailhead and with a Salesforce BA certification coming next year. Ian God's CEO, Elements.cloud, was on the Salesforce BA certification scoping team. And in this session, he covers the key BA skills to master and how to plan your career.
So the value of business analysis is well understood by Salesforce, but we need to go back to 2004 when Richard Parker and I wrote a book called Common Approach, Uncommon Results. And that's where basic UPN, Universal Process Notation, was born, and the whole principles about engaging end users with business process maps. Roll the clock forward to 2014, and we took many of those ideas and put them into a book specifically for Salesforce called Analysis, Automation, Adoption for Awesome Admins. And then for some of you who remember All Confessions, we did the root cause analysis and looked at why 1,200 confessions were coming up. And you can see there from the chart, business analysis was at the root of many of the challenges that people had in All Confessions. And of course, now there is a Salesforce business analysis career. You can go to Trailhead and you can see all the modules that are particularly relevant to a business analyst. And now in the architect community, there are specific business process mapping courses which are part of the foundation for becoming an architect. In this case, a B2B solution architect, but also in terms of B2C and the enterprise architect. So let's think about the scope of business analysis and your role as a business analyst. And there you can see a fairly simple process. We're capturing requirements, defining the work items, building, testing, documenting the solution, and then training users. So if I think about each of those steps and where you as a business analyst have a role, clearly in the validate requirements, you will need to understand the business, but then really understand what their business needs are, not what they think they want, but what they really need. That will then drive out a list of requirements, some process maps, some entity relationship diagrams. So then the next step, understanding the org risk and developing user stories. The output of that is a user story, but also understanding the changes that maybe need to be made to Salesforce, and obviously the risk of making those changes. In the build, test, and document solution phase, really as a business analyst, you're supporting UAT, user acceptance testing, which is really drawing on the requirements and the process maps that you developed with the end users. The system then gets delivered to end users, and then your role as a business analyst is to drive up adoption, taking some of the content you built in the business analysis phases early on and using that as training material, then obviously then capturing feedback so we can go back around that loop again. So that's the scope of a business analyst. So let's think about how you plan your career. So I think about your career in terms of a number of different dimensions. So if I look at bottom left, domain expertise. Are you an expert in, say, the sales area or CPQ? Have you focused on HR? So there's a business area or domain that you have an understanding in. On the right-hand side there, you clearly need to understand the capabilities of Salesforce. You can't be thinking about defining solutions in isolation. So you need some Salesforce qualifications. And clearly the admin cert is the core certification that you probably need. If we go then around to top left, business experience. So you need to understand a particular business area. So it might be a particular industry. So you've spent your time in the insurance industry or in non-profits. So understanding that business is critical so you can start to engage your end users and start asking the 5 whys. In terms of communication skills, that's more than just talking. It's about facilitating workshops. It's about writing up requirements. It's about questioning. So there are a set of communication skills which are very particular to the business analyst. And then finally, we're talking about the various business analysis tools and techniques, the ability to map processes, the ability to write requirements, to create user stories. So if they're the different dimensions, let's think about how your career will grow. So if you're a Salesforce admin, probably the shape of your skills looks like this. You probably have some strong domain expertise. You'll clearly have high levels of Salesforce qualifications, but maybe your business experience is low because you've spent less time really engaging the business users. Maybe some of those communication skills and those BA tools and techniques you haven't got under your belt yet. If you're watching this and you're a business analyst but have not really had very much involvement in Salesforce, then maybe the shape of your skills looks like this. Clearly you understand what business analysis is, but you actually have a relatively limited understanding about the capabilities of Salesforce, and you haven't yet gained any of those certifications. So clearly Trailhead and then the admin certification is what you need to actually underpin your business analysis skills. So my suggestion is that to be able to pass the business analysis certification when it comes out next year, is you need to be well-rounded in terms of each of those 5 different dimensions. So if you're a business analyst, you need to build up those Salesforce qualifications. If you're a Salesforce admin, you need to think about some of those, the business experience, the BA tools and techniques, and those communication skills. So where can you find that information? So there's a list of resources there. We've taken our 20 years expertise around Salesforce and also around business analysis, and we've captured it all in academy.elements.cloud. So that's our learning center. Clearly Trailhead, if you search for business analysts, then you'll start to find some of those courses there. If you have access to the partner learning camp, the architect course, if you search there for business process mapping, that gets into a lot more detail. And again, the content for those you will find in academy.elements.cloud. And clearly there are articles that we're regularly writing, and you could go to app.inspiringexcellence.cloud and listen to 3-minute insights. Again, drop on the tag there, look for business analysis. Or of course, continue the conversation with me. I'm always happy to spend time talking to people about our experience of the last 20 years of being a business analyst.
The actor Ryan Reynolds is famous for Deadpool, The Proposal, and his clever YouTube ads. He's also the owner of Aviation Gin. In this fun live workshop, we show how to map his processes using UPN process diagrams. Chin chin.
For this process mapping exercise, we're going to take Ryan Reynolds' view of how the Aviation Gin process works. And I've done a bit of research on Ryan. Clearly, he's a very successful actor. The Proposal, a couple of Deadpools, and he's also made some very, very funny marketing videos. But he's the owner of Aviation Gin and has recently sold that to Diageo and has a long earn-out. So he has a vested interest in the success of Aviation Gin. So obviously, prior to the workshop, I've done a lot of research on that. I've also spent some time thinking about and looking at the Aviation Gin process. And also, it's important to do the research. So let's see how good it is. Cheers. Wow, that really is good. Right, let's get mapping. So let's hear from Ryan in his own words how the Aviation Gin process works.
You know, people come up to me all the time and they say, what makes Aviation Gin so delicious? Most of the time I run away because non-celebrities frighten me. But here is the answer.
It begins each morning at 4 a.m. The distillers of Aviation American Gin rise to greet the new day with 4 hours of silent meditation.
Fantastic. So let me stop you there and let's just define the first bit of the process. So prior to the workshop, I'd already created a process map inside Elements. I popped the Aviation Gin logo in there, and I put down here that I thought the output was going to be sales and earn-out, and the beginning would be demand. But listening to Ryan, that things start at 4 a.m. and the first step here is the team meditate. So we can connect that. So that's the activity, they meditate. And you can add a resource, and it was I think they said the distillers, there we go. So I've already preloaded some of those resources in. So the distillers meditate. So we have an output there, and let's add an activity. So let's hear from Ryan what happens next.
From there, it's a quick scoot down to the grove. The citrus fruits are misted using only the tears of Aviation's owner, me, Ryan Reynolds.
Right, perfect. So they scoot down to the grove. So this must be after 4 hours. And I can just drag that resource across. Right, so what I think I heard here is that we missed the citrus fruits using tiers. Right, so that presumably is the distillers again are doing that. And the input from there must be, we must have some tiers. So we've got tiers coming in, and we're actually at the grove. So we must collect the tiers, and I think they said they came from the owner, from Ryan. So let's go and add the resource. Owner, there we are, owner Ryan, we can add him. And presumably there must be some reason why we've got those tiers. So let's say it's because there was no Oscars. There we go. So now we have, they meditate, they scoot to the grove, they now miss the citrus fruits using the tiers, and we've now collected the tiers. So what happens next?
All of our botanicals are humanely caught, cage-free, and grain-fed. The reason some people don't drink gin is that strong juniper taste. So, after apologizing to each berry individually, we beat the living hell out of them, creating a smoother, more refined finish.
Let me pause you there for a moment. Let's work out what's happened there. So we said that we harvest the fruit, and who does that? Presumably not the distillers. So there aren't any pickers, so let's add that as a new resource. It's a human resource, there we are. So, and when's that ready? Presumably when they are ripe. And then we had a process there where we said we beat the berries. I wonder who does that. So let's add a resource there. Let's call those beaters, and we'll create a new resource for those. There we go. And this is when they have been picked. Fantastic. So we've now beaten the berries. So what happens next?
To ensure that heavenly taste, every bottle of Aviation is ordained by the Unitarian Church of Fresno, California.
Okay, so we've just said we are, you just said that we ordain the bottles, and luckily we've already created But Ryan, I need to pause you for a moment there. We went from beating berries to having bottles already ready to be shipped. So I think there's a little bit of a process that's missed here. So maybe there's actually a process called actually make the gin. And presumably there's a process here called bottle the gin. So we now have beaten berries. We now have gin. And we now have bottled gin. Now, fortunately, there's another team who knows a bit more about making gin than probably Ryan does, who's already been mapping out the process for how we make gin. So instead of drilling down on this to get more detail, instead I'm going to import the process map that I know that they've already been creating. So instead of saying drill down new, I can say drill down import. And there's the make gin process. So I'm now going to import that, and I'm sure that the distillers are involved in making the gin, so we'll pop that one on there. And if we just roll over, we can see that there are some process diagrams already been built there by the distillers for exactly how they make the gin. Now, I could click there and we could drill down and have a look at that in more detail. So we can see here the process starts, finishes with gin, but it starts with citrus fruits, crushed berries, and mountain water rye. So those are, I don't see that at the higher level. I need to go back and make sure that we've got those other items on there. So let's just go back up. So what I heard here is that we also have water and rye coming in, but it feels like the citrus goes straight in there and they're not beaten. So it's only the berries that are peaked. So this is citrus fruits. And these are the berries, go that route. So again, the act of understanding a little bit more the lower levels gives us more input to make sure that that top level is correct. And obviously the output was correct, which is right. So we bottle the gin. We now bottle gin. We now have ordained bottles. So back to you, Ryan. What happens next?
And then, before it departs home, serenaded with the healing music of Sarah McLachlan.
So the next thing that happens is we serenade the bottles. And there is Sarah McLachlan. So we'll add her. So then what? So back to you, Ryan.
Some might call this overkill, but the next time you visit your local mixologist and you murder that silky smooth aviation martini, well, who's the killer now, asshole? Aviation, an American original. Now owned by a Canadian.
Can I stop you there? I think we missed a couple of steps out. So presumably we need to now ship the gin so those mixologists can do their magic. And let's add a resource on there. So there's no shippers, so let's put shippers on there as a resource. And that would be ready to ship. So that obviously gives us sales. So orders for gin need to come in. So presumably there are orders for the gin coming in from customers. And then we have a process here called earnout. I'm assuming that once we have been paid, so we need to be paid for orders, and what we need there is an order coming in and confirmation of receipt. Of shipment. And an order. And there's Ryan's earnout. So there is a very quick process. The numbers aren't quite lined up. So if we just right mouse click, we can say, get all the numbers lined up. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 correctly. We could even line up each of these diagram boxes so it's nice and neat and tidy. So we need to add a resource there. And the bottlers. Just straighten that line up. Perfect. We now got a process here, draft. And really we want to publish it so we've actually got some version control over it. So I can say, let's make ready for release. Then we choose a release. So this was the workshop. So and I want to include not just this diagram, but also those lower levels, because I want to make sure that those are also signed off. So I've now said I want this to be released. And if I nip over into the application, the release page, I can then go and publish this. So here are just two diagrams, that top level diagram and the make gin one. So I'll hit publish. And it was successfully published. If I now go back to the diagram and do a refresh. So if we look now and look at the release tab, we can now see that we have a draft and a published version. So now we can start making changes, confident that we've got some version controller we can actually work out what has changed. So the act of mapping the process has given us a far better understanding for all of us, the distillers, the bottlers, the shippers. We've all got a consistent picture to understand how the aviation gin process works. So really valuable in terms of getting everybody on the same page. So thank you for spending time with me and with Ryan to map out this business process around the aviation gin. So some takeaways from this mapping workshop. Number one, there are business benefits for mapping. It's not just a precursor to a Salesforce implementation. Secondly, live workshops you can see can be very quick and effective getting everybody on the same page. Don't think that process mapping means weeks and weeks of drawing out complex diagrams that no one will understand. You'll be surprised how quickly you can start to engage end users. And thirdly, I think we've seen the powers in the aggregation of documentation, the ability to link not just a process diagram, but a process diagram to third-party documentation, to requirements, to the Salesforce metadata.
Walter Bril is a senior customer success manager at Elements.cloud. He's been an expert on process for over 20 years. The principle of shift left is that the earlier you spot problems, the cheaper they are to fix. In 3 simple steps, Walter will show you how to shift left and save up to 80% in development, testing, and release effort.
Gene, we have a situation brewing with the carbon dioxide.
We had a CO2 filter problem on the lunar module,
5 filters on the limb.
which were meant for 2 guys for a day and a half. So I told the doc,
You're already up to 8 on the gauges. Anything over 15 and you get impaired judgment, blackouts, the beginnings of brain asphyxia.
What about the scrubbers on the command module?
They take square cartridges.
The ones on the limb are round.
Tell me this isn't a government operation.
This just isn't a contingency we've remotely looked at.
Those CO2 levels are going to be getting toxic.
Well, I suggest you gentlemen invent a way to put a square peg in a round hole. Rapidly.
Okay, people, listen up. People upstairs handed us this one, and we gotta come through. We gotta find a way to make this fit into the hole for this, using nothing but that. Let's get it organized.
Okay, let's build a filter.
Maybe get some coffee going, too, someone.
This was not just expensive, it was actually life-threatening. Welcome to a shift-left journey. As we just saw, it can be pretty expensive to discover the issues in production. So in this particular case, there were actually 2 design teams that created the filter solution. because it was asked for, it was the objective, and it was delivered. So far so good. Of course, nobody thought that there would be ever a need to exchange filters between the command module and the lunar module. And you cannot always anticipate all possible situations. Still, when the question was, we need a filter, why would you create two solutions for the same demand? I think because there was no awareness. The teams simply were not aware of what happened throughout the whole project. Now, this happens everywhere, all the time, and it can become pretty costly. As you can see in this sheet, the National Institute of Standards and Technology paper shows you in actually 309 pages how expensive things will become when you get into trouble in post-release. Now, in the early days of system development, the waterfall method was widely used as a linear process. There was a demand, a solution was sold, requirements were gathered, the solution was built, tested, and released. Or I must say, this is actually what we thought was released, and this is what actually was released. So eventually ending up with a solution that, well, resembled the demand, where actually this was the product goal. Clearly something had to change here. So when a software development process is viewed as a left to right sequential process, well, in the past, doing tests earlier may be seen as shifting it to the left. So the term itself can be seen as a misnomer, since we are not simply shifting, but doing also tests at all stages of the process. Now, the idea of shift left was coined by Larry Smith in 2001 and was mainly used for testing. Now, we can utilize this principle of shift left also to other areas, of course, and it's all, well, intertwined, I would almost say. So, for example, if you take deployment, nowadays continuous deployment has become common practice to quickly deliver fixes and features and so on. Building and provisioning and deploying of software is automated. And in fact, continuous deployment enables continuous testing as well. And well, look at, for example, design. If you have poor requirements, so poor requirements can lead to a product not aligned with business needs. Going beyond those requirements, you can then sort of adopt the whole, and you can adopt the entire team to design thinking and mindset. So everyone would then have a shared vision of the product. As a matter of fact, I think the principle of shift left can be applied to your entire implementation lifecycle. So let me show you our view of it. I'm sure yours will look sort of similar to this one. So first, we think you need to build the right things. That's not completely the same as what a user wants, but what your user actually needs from a business perspective. So users often ask for functionality that's already there, but they might need better training or understand the process better. Or maybe it needs a bit tweaking on the UI. Also things like, or themes like good architecture principles spring to mind here, by the way. So the Apollo filter example would actually not completely apply here, as the question was, build a filter system. So the second thing is to build the things right. Do we have sufficient information to do the testing? But I guess even more importantly, are we actually aligned? Yes, we have developed a filter system, but look, the other project team came up with exactly the same functionality, however, with a total different design. Now, is that not a bit odd? Why do they need square boxes, whereas the others came up with a round one? So obviously, the earlier we discover these misalignments in the implementation cycle, the better. Shift left. Now let's look at some aspects we spoke about that relates to the ROI you can get with this shift left mindset. So we already talked about avoiding rework. So discovering issues up front saves a huge amount of time and resources. As a matter of fact, you could gain a reduction up to 80% here. However, it's not only rework. So, secondly, how many times do users ask for functionality they will never use? Now, why does that actually happen in the first place? I think it happens because a human simply cannot oversee everything. And bad or even no communication plays a big role here too. You actually want to have an overview, a central managed overview, a governed single source of truth. We find that not having that overview contributes negatively to this problem. Now here's the third one. You can actually accelerate your DevOps from weeks to days. This is related to proper risk mitigation. But then you obviously need to first understand the various risks. So what changes needs to go through serious governed cycles and what changes need a less governed process. So understanding those risks is key. If you have very low risk changes, you could even go like, and dare I say it, let's just do this in production. And there's another one. Understanding the actual business needs often also leads to improvements. That alone can lead to a 25% savings or even more. Think about simple but powerful achievements such as getting everyone way quicker on the same page. Because you have a single source of truth and found issues and challenges early in the process. And last but not least, here's an example. You just removed that pick list item of a field because you thought it was of no use. What you did not realize is that this very pick list item was supposed to get used in the yet to be released work builder flow and was hard coded in Apex. So early visibility of that saved a ton of disasters. Now you heard me using the phrase single source of truth a couple of times. What I mean with that is that whatever role you have, for example, you're a user, developer, analyst, project manager, whatever, you all ought to have a joint and aligned view of what is going on or what the business needs. So this joint view and alignment or single source of truth is one of the biggest challenges in pretty much any business. Of course, you'll have your regular project meetings, workshops, etc. But how do you keep everything aligned? Where and how do you store your documentation? How do you ensure accuracy? The bigger your organization gets, the bigger these challenges will get. So how could you even begin to tackle this challenge? We use 3 simple principles in this respect. Now, obviously, we use Elements ourselves to do this, but more important is to get the ideas across. So first, you want to manage all your user stories centrally. Not more or less loosely captured in various spreadsheets or PowerPoints, Word documents, and whatever you have, or even by project folders. And I say folders, not just one folder. No, you want to manage them thoroughly on a big pile. You also want them to be easy available for people who need them and in the right context. And with context, I mean things like to which business process is this story related, what potential risks are present, who are my stakeholders, etc. You could dump all that in one or more spreadsheets, but again, that will take a big toll on maintenance. And as practice often shows, fade away in time, as you simply have no time to spend on all that administration. Secondly, it makes a lot of sense to group the appropriate stories to the right release. How do these stories interact with each other? Are there any conflicts? Or do they support each other? And again, in what context? And then the third principle is where the magic happens. How do you link your metadata to your user stories? What a relief when you have the ability to understand the conflicts around the related metadata and the user stories, avoiding upfront breaking your org. We find that keeping a metadata dictionary up to date, creating and managing the various user stories and add those to releases is hardly doable using isolated solution. However, this happens a lot, with all the frustration. And with frustration comes also risks and costs. Now, obviously, we built Elements to take away exactly that frustration, resulting in minimizing operational risks, avoiding solutions that are actually no solutions. As we have seen, ROI is easily achievable. Shift left across the entire implementation cycle does make sense, and leveraging tooling makes a difference. Now, if you want to see how this works in practice, simply contact us. Book a chat with the people who have gone through that frustration, so you don't need to have to. Thank you very much for your time.
Get into the hole for this. Using nothing but that. Let's get it organized.
Okay, let's build a filter.
Better get some coffee going too, someone.
Walking into a new org as a consultant or new employee is scary. Richard Parker, co-founder and chief customer officer at Elements.cloud, is going to talk through a proven approach that can reduce the time to full org discovery by 50% and dramatically lower your stress levels.
Welcome to this session. My name is Richard Parker. I'm Chief Customer Officer and co-founder of Elements.cloud. And over the next 10-15 minutes, I'm going to take you through an overview so that you can understand how to leverage the capabilities we provide in Elements to reduce org discovery by significantly more than 50% in most cases. I'm also going to show you how you can take the insights, the framework that creates, and actually leverage that as a Salesforce configuration knowledge platform over the long term. There's a lot you can do to explore this and try it out in your own org, and we encourage you to do that. But most of all, we encourage you to engage with us and let us help you understand how you can leverage these capabilities in your own situations. Now, when we look at org discovery, one of the things you want to consider is what are the drivers. Now, typically, the biggest driver is risk. Fundamentally, people want to understand if I'm going to change things, if I'm going to take advantage of all the fantastic capabilities there are on the Salesforce platform, how am I sure that I'm not going to break something? If I want to change something, if I want to add capabilities, what am I impacting? What potentially could I break? Now, from a technical perspective, I'm going to show you some of the things we can do to help with that. But there's other elements to risk as well. It's not just in terms of the software and the configuration and how everything comes together. It's also operational. Obviously, you're using Salesforce to generate business outcomes, and a lot of those are operational. It might be end-to-end in terms of impacting many different people. It could also be multiple systems, lots of integrations, customer data flowing in and out of other systems. And understanding that and being able to link that into the context of the structure of what you got in Salesforce is really useful. The third point there is regulatory. Now, regulatory is from the perspective of, yes, I might be able to change a field, and yes, it might technically work, but have I inadvertently caused a non-compliance? Or have I, without understanding what's going on, caused an issue that has broken down some regulatory issue, some complex reporting or dashboards that were there from a compliance perspective? So there are different aspects to risk here that we can bring in. The second key driver for org discovery is really, if you think about this as building your knowledge of what's going on in your org, it's also about making sure that as you add new things, as you expand, that you're building the right things. Another way of looking at this is you may get going really fast, you may get fantastic at from a DevOps perspective of building things very fast and building them well, but are you going in the right direction? And the more you know about your org, how it works and how it interacts with your operations, the better. So it's all about velocity, not just speed. The third thing is if you want to engage with senior management in terms of getting resources, in terms of being able to articulate to them what's really going on in the org, what you need, whether that's from the impact of tech debt, whether it's from the impact of not understanding them not understanding why it is taking so long or why it could take so long and needs to be gone through in a very rigorous way to ensure that you don't break things. Being able to do that and explain to people from a management perspective is crucial. Now, Forrester back in 2017 may seem like a long time ago, but it's just as relevant, if not more relevant today. They made this statement in a study they did. Salesforce at Scale Dilemma was the title. And by the way, it's one of the resources that we link to. And the statement is that the complexity of scale crushes Salesforce responsiveness. As Salesforce use grows, innovation slows, flexibility evaporates. Now, that's not some doom monger saying. It's also not the inevitable outcome. And they have 5 specific things they talk about in that report to make sure that you don't end up there. But it underscores the importance of taking a disciplined, proactive approach to understanding your org so that as it gets more complex, more strategic, more integrated with the rest of your operations, with your systems, you don't grind to a halt because you're worried about what are we going to break, what are we going to impact if we change this. So if you're an admin, if you're a consultant, if you're a platform owner, if you're anybody who's walking into a new org, how do you make sure that this isn't your experience? How do you make sure that you're not looking around to see, okay, I really don't understand this. I wasn't involved in it. The people who built this have left. Maybe the partners who were involved have left. Maybe colleagues of yours who did this in areas of the org that you don't manage. It might not be a new org, it might be your existing one. How do you make sure that you have better insights than this? Well, Elements brings capabilities that allow you to shine a light on this. And there's three key areas. The first is to accelerate org discovery. We auto-generate a metadata dictionary, and we do this by using the metadata APIs that are available within Salesforce, but we build a significant amount of code standing on the shoulders of those APIs to actually bring out not just the structure of what's going on in Salesforce, but on a nightly sync, the trends of what's changing, and also insights into usage, into the risk of certain objects, and we do some basic rules-based analysis of, for example, fields within objects to get an understanding of what's there. The second area is to give you some element of X-ray vision of your org config. And again, we use the dependency API, but we build very, very significant amount of code on top of that to understand not just the dependencies that are there, but to start to give you the ability to understand the impact of changes. And the third area is, with that framework that you have comes the ability to maintain that over time and aggregate existing knowledge, whatever format that's in, and start to pull that into this central repository of knowledge to support your org and your understanding of how your org is configured. The key thing there is it's what you collectively know in context of what's important. This isn't about an individual, it's about helping get the knowledge out of people's heads into a central place where everybody can benefit from this. Even you can benefit from this 2 months, 2 years down the line when you're changing or building on something. We've done a lot of work in this area over the last few years, and we've actually documented the org discovery process. When I talk about resources, attached to these boxes, you see the little paperclip here and the drill down corner here. You can click on these, you can register with Elements, you can get access to this free knowledge, and associated with this is a wealth of information, not just free org assessment, 20 minutes, 64 questions to understand how things work, but also how to integrate and run, for example, Salesforce Optimizer, and then how to sync using the Elements capabilities with your production org or a full sandbox org to start to get insights and use the full capabilities here. So this is available. There'll be links to it at the end. Obviously in 15 minutes, not going to go through this in detail, but there's plenty here you can get your teeth into, and very happy to take you through this in detail. So what is this metadata dictionary? Well, simply put, you can think of it as a nested list of what's going on in your Salesforce org. And the way this is built is as you highlight an individual, in this case, the very highest level, in the right panel, you get the information about what's going on here. So you can see what's going on, not just in the core Salesforce orgs, but in managed packages that you've implemented, and they're here. But straight out of the box, and this is something you could be accessing, setting up this sync is literally minutes to set up, and I do mean minutes, 2-3 minutes to set up. If you've got a very large, very complex old org, it might take you a couple of hours for that sync to run. Normally 15, 20, 30 minutes. And at the end of that, you could click on this org analytics report, and you start to get insights into what's there already provided to you straight out of the box. No work needed, just straight out of the box. For example, percentage filled for all fields on an object, records by object, fantastic, easy way to see what's really being used. We might have 960 custom objects, but which are the ones that have any records in? And oh, look, there's 78 objects here, which have got either 0 or 1 record, really important to build at the time, haven't been used. And by default, we look at the last 10,000 records, but could be a couple of million if you want to do that, or even set it up for all the records there. So quick insights, quick reporting, quick overviews, impact analysis on custom fields by object, so that you can see the red ones there, no data, not involved in automation, not involved in formula fields. If you're looking to clean up tech debt, you can start looking at these rather than the green ones, which are filled in more than 3% of the time. The amber ones may not have data, but they are involved in automation, formula fields, etc. So there's intelligence behind this. We help you. We do a lot of the heavy lifting. We can save literally, we've got people saying to us, my God, I've saved not just hours, I've actually saved days in trying to understand what's going on here. Now, away from those reports, you have this framework, and if you drill into it, you can see these little triangles here. I can click down, I go to the opportunity object, and against here, I've now got in the right panel, the ability to see what's going on by record type with that particular object, an optimization tab to capture actionable items there and notes and assign them to people, the ability to see dependencies we're going to see in a second, add documentation, notes, existing documentation, link to changes, integrate with Jira, pull in this, pull in Jira stories, requirements, put them in the context of what's changing. And the key bit here is also collaboration. It's no good having this ivory tower of information. You can mention people, bring them into the conversation about what's going on in the org, invite them to come in, collaborate on this information. Now, in addition to the data population statistics in those reports, you can also do that by object. So you can really start to understand, okay, what's going on within this object with quite a level of detail. But you can also start to look at, so I'm drilling down from opportunity into a particular field here and starting to look at the dependencies. Now, straight off the bat here, I can see that there are single level dependencies where this is used. I can drill into that, and where you see the little cloud with an arrow, I can pop straight into setup in Salesforce, maintaining this right panel. But I can also, down here, you see dependency where you use multi-level tree. And what that gives me is the ability to not just see the single level views, but to drill through those where it has a plus, drill through them and see what's going on behind this. Again, saving hours, sometimes days, in terms of understanding what's going on. And most importantly, avoiding the risk of inadvertently deleting something that looks innocuous, but is actually got a whole load of dependencies sitting behind it. But I can also click, this is a working list. I can click on these and I can see details about it. I can understand what's behind it. I can go into the tree here and understand what's happening, but I can also click on this cloud with the arrow there, and I'm straight into, as I said, straight into Salesforce, and through a Chrome extension, we expose all the same information in setup. Now, why is this critical? Well, because when you're doing all discovery, there's a lot of forensic stuff. You're diving in and out of Salesforce, you're figuring stuff out, we're giving you insights, but you may want to take action. You may want to look at the dependencies inside Salesforce. You may want to add documentation, changes, etc. And you can do it all inside Salesforce. And it's as simple as right panel, click on document, add documentation. Could be a note, it could be a Google Doc, it could be a link to something in Confluence that you're capturing, knowledge that people have. It could be somebody photoing a whiteboard where they're explaining the architecture of why something was built. And this is a key thing. It's not just what you're doing, it's why it was built that way that is invaluable months or years down the line. So that's a brief insight into these three areas. We could spend significant time, and we're very happy to do that, looking at the metadata dictionary and how you can set that up, the dependency analysis, the impact analysis, and how to aggregate knowledge. Now, there's a lot there. Fortunately for everyone in the Elements ecosystem working with Salesforce, we have an academy. So as well as being happy to engage with you, you can register for the academy for free. You get access to understand what you can do with this, and then training in the context of personas, with multiple courses behind, with routes to follow through different training courses or different use cases. So in this case, a combination of org health and impact analysis, documenting your org, fantastic way of understanding. There's business process mapping and data modeling if you would like to do that as you go along the way. So that was an overview. I hope that was gives you at least an understanding of the scope and the comprehensiveness of the capabilities here to help you. You can register and run a free proof of concept on your org. And as I suggested, a full sandbox or production is best because you get all the insights with what's going on in record counts. You can link to that org discovery process and follow that through in detail. access the academy that I talked about there. We also have an org maturity assessment that you can run independently of your org, just to look at, answer 64 questions, 20 minutes, and get a pretty good understanding of where the gaps are and where you can be helped with a whole load of third-party resources to help there. The bottom line is, engage with us. We're here to help you. I trust that that was useful for you in the last 15 minutes, and I very much look forward to speaking to you about your org and how we can help with your org discovery. Thank you very much.
Companies are looking for quick solutions to shift left, but they often fail to invest in planning for test automation design, which impacts success. In this talk, Chris Armstrong, QA strategy consultant for Provar, will cover the 3 preconditions needed for successful test automation design.
Hi, I'm Chris Armstrong, QA strategist at Provar. Now, I've been a tester for 17 years, and I've worked across the entire software development lifecycle in many different industries, and test automation has been a key component to the success in my career. Now, many companies are looking to implement test automation, but they don't necessarily have the information that they need or the right ways to design a framework in order to gain success, and very quickly decisions can be made that can set you up for failure. Now, today we're going to look at 3 preconditions for test automation framework design that will set you up for success. Now, before you write a line of code, stop. The most important thing you can do is get an understanding of what it is that you need to achieve. What are your key requirements? What are the goals? How can you measure the success of your automation? And once you've established what you need to establish that what it is you can achieve. And all of this should be done tool agnostically, language agnostically, and even to a degree skill agnostically. It makes the most sense to understand everything that you need without considering those things first, so then you can find the most appropriate solution for you to solve your problems. Now, I used to work for a multinational corporation that had a big automation dream. Our dream was to take all our small satellite offices, take our automation teams and make a platform team that could design an underlying part that would be configurable and would work for all our different local instances. And then we would have just one maintenance group of subject matter experts who could support and update throughout the whole of the globe. Now, myself and my colleagues from around the world, we spent a bit of time talking at the beginning about what are the dreams that we have for this project? How can we make this project a success? And the first thing we talked about was gathering the requirements, understanding the people that are going to be using this tool and working out what it is that they need today and what they'll need in the future. And so we set about reaching out to all of those different people and understanding who they were, what they needed. Failure, however, was what this project was destined to be, because a tool was chosen without requirements. This happened at the same time as we had started to gather those requirements. A tool was selected that required no cost because we owned the IP, but it was not an appropriate tool for our department or our industry. It had been working in a different way with a different product and had been sold as something that it couldn't be. As we gathered our requirements and we put them next to what the tool could achieve, we realized that all those things that we had hoped we could achieve were not going to be available with this tool. Now, a decision on making that tool destined us to fail. And it was something that meant that working together with those end people, it also just wouldn't work. But working with people is important. We talk about collaboration, and actually working with people who will be impacted by, directly impacted by, and using on a day-to-day basis the test automation from the offset is the right way to work. Had we done that before a tool had been chosen, we know that we could have chosen something that would have been more impactful, more set up for success. But there's other reasons that bringing people on board from the beginning of a project, like test automation, is important, because having change done to you rather than being a part of change, it gives you an ownership sense. And we really believe that quality of products belongs to the whole team. It's not just the QAs. It's not just those people who are doing testing. It's not just a gatekeeping thing. Quality should belong to everybody. And if we all feel like an ownership of the test automation framework, that will help that culture of owning the quality. It will also help with buy-in for new people, gaining early adopters and allies and people who will be able to spread the good work that you're doing with your work, because we need early successes to build upon in order to make a bigger successful automation framework. It will also help when we're talking to management and other people who maybe only are byproducts of our automation, where they just get reports. If we have something that we believe in and we really see the value in from the beginning, then we don't have so much trouble with convincing the people that maybe write the checks. But we also need to think more into the future. Automation projects should be designed and then implemented with the future in mind. And they should also be treated with the same respect and rigor as production code. We should be looking at test automation and saying, if that test fails, there's something wrong with my production code, because I believe that the tests are made to give me that information. And I shouldn't be saying, this test failure means there's something wrong with the test. I need to investigate the test. That's the wrong way to work. That's a time void. Now, getting it right early isn't always easy. So we need to set ourselves up to be able to learn from our mistakes, learn from things that we work through. Testing is all about gaining information, learning information, and using that information to inform future decisions. We should be building for the benefit of people who are yet to come, or even for the future versions of ourselves. I don't know about you, but work I was doing 6 months ago, if I looked at it today, I'm not sure I'd be able to just pick it straight back up again. We should be building with scalability, testability, and maintainability in mind. If I'm working on a small component for my automation, is that something that I'll be able to reuse in the future with something else? Will it be configurable for different things? Don't forget, small architectural changes can give you big wins in the future. Sometimes small short-term gain for long-term gain is the right way to go. Now, remember that in an increasingly complex Salesforce testing ecosystem, a tool alone isn't going to help you to implement your test automation design without the correct planning that we've discussed today, including having a roadmap for your testing requirements, the importance for early buy-in, and how to future-proof your test automation design. Those things will set you up for future success with your test automation. At Provar, our unique Salesforce-aligned architecture and unbreakable tests can help you implement your automation framework quickly. Whether you're watching this talk as a Salesforce admin, doing painful manual test execution before a release and looking for an out-of-the-box fix, or a developer looking for custom-coded solutions, our Salesforce test automation experts at Provar are here to help deliver quality products for your business and your customers. We love feedback, and we want to learn more about how we might be able to help you. So please reach out, get in touch, and let's see how Provar can help.